Hi again. Here we go with another exciting chapter in the Teaching by Principles dynasty. We are really moving beyond theories and towards actual practical ideas for the classroom this week as we talk about classroom management, a topic that is without doubt in my top 23 chapters of this book. Here we go. This chapter focuses on classroom management, and the two ideas we are going to concentrate on are physical aspects of the classroom and how to handle problems you might be faced with when teaching. Before we start, I suggest you look through the general guidelines for classroom management on page 290. I'm not going to get into them in this video, but they are still worth looking at. Let's check out the topics for this chapter. As you can see, we have a few more topics than usual this week. But as you know, more topics means more slides, and more slides means more fun. Are you ready? As always, we'll have 3 discussion topics. First, I want you to think about speaking in front of a group of people. Many people don't like to speak in public, but as a teacher, that is what you have to do. You have to stand in front of a group of students and speak. So I would like you to think about your own public speaking skills. When it comes to speaking in front of a group, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? It is vital to be aware of these if we want to become better speakers and teachers. So have a good think about it and let's share in class. First, we need to think about how our classroom looks. Everyone knows that if your work area is well organized, it will be a better environment for working. I'm glad you can't see my desk though. The same goes for your classroom. You need to check the lighting and that all students will be able to see and hear you clearly. You need to think about seating arrangement. Are you going to have students in groups, rows, circles, horseshoe shape? The way you organize the desks will affect the dynamics of discussions and activities you do in class. Finally, you also need to think about equipment you'll be using, such as the chalkboard, speakers, projectors, and where they will go in the room. Also, remember to have a backup plan, just in case any of your equipment doesn't work at the last minute. Next, we need to think about our presence in the room. First, think about your voice. You want to speak with a strong voice. Don't shout, but make sure everyone in the room can hear. A good way to strengthen your voice is to lie with your back on the floor, at home, not in the classroom, and read a book aloud. This strengthens your diaphragm and helps you speak naturally with power. We also need to think about our posture. Is your back straight? Make sure you aren't slouching. The way you walk and talk creates an air of confidence. If you show confidence in yourself as a teacher, students will have a lot more confidence in you as their teacher. Let's have a quick discussion. We've talked a bit about the physical aspects of the classroom and physical aspects of we, the teachers. Considering these ideas, I want you to get some points together about how you would like to design your classroom. Of course, I want you to think about the layout of the classroom, but also consider what will go on the walls. Will you have posters? Would you like to have a sofa in your room? Think of a few ideas. Something I have said before, and I will say again, is that no lesson goes to plan. In fact, if your lesson goes exactly according to your lesson plan is wrong. Things are going to happen that distract the lesson. Perhaps students don't understand as much as you had hoped, or they understand more than you had expected. Perhaps a pigeon will fly into the room during the lesson. That has happened to me once. There was nowhere in the lesson plan saying a pigeon would fly into the room. As the teacher, you just need to accept the changes and move with them. Be flexible and willing to adjust to the changes. As Bruce Lee said, be like water. Well, maybe we shouldn't get that deep, but at least be flexible. Now, we can study as many theories related to teaching languages as we like, but there is nothing as valuable as classroom experience. Different ideas about education might work in theory, but when you walk into the classroom, it is a completely different situation, and sometimes it can get really tough. For example, you might have to teach large classes. If so, you'll soon realize that you can't spend as much time with each student as you'd like. This is where pair work and group work comes in handy. The students won't have the same proficiency level. They'll be mixed. You need to come up with tasks that challenge the better students, but don't overwhelm the students who haven't reached a high proficiency yet. You'll certainly face the question of whether you should only use the target language or not. Ideally, we'd like to conduct our classes entirely in English, but we need to think about whether that is really the best thing for our students. You'll be under pressure from your institution, so even if you want to teach in a particular way, your supervisors might not agree with that. Your students might be having a bad day, so you'll have to spend time disciplining the students, which decreases the amount of time you have to teach. I remember watching one open class once, and it took the teacher about 10 minutes just to get the students to stand up and say good morning. Check the list on pages 301 and 302 for a few pointers on discipline. I suggest you get pretty good at this pretty quickly. Then we have cheating. When it comes to cheating, prevention is the best approach. One of the reasons why students cheat, which is not touched upon in our textbook, is that they are concerned about being compared to others. In your classes, I strongly suggest you avoid comparisons of your students, both among the students in your class and those in other classes, and get the students to have the attitude that my only rival is the me of yesterday. For more on this, I can strongly recommend work related to the growth mindset by Carol Dweck. There is a lot in there for you to think about. In the last chapter, we talked about different roles teachers may take on, like being a controlling teacher or just being a resource teacher. But there are other things we need to consider as well. As a teacher, we need to make sure we are fair and don't show any favors to one particular student or group of students. Often, our teaching style will reflect our personality. Are we rather formal or informal? This will be reflected in our teaching. Are we serious, or do we like to joke around a bit? Again, this part of ourselves will show up in our teaching. Of course, our cultural backgrounds will affect our teaching as well. Are we expected to be perfect just because we are teachers? In some cultures, we might be. The list on page 305 about contrasting cultural expectations is pretty interesting, so make sure you spend a little extra time reading through it. Finally, we have rapport. Establishing rapport and a feeling of mutual respect is vital if we want to create a classroom with a good atmosphere for learning. There are various ways of doing this, but one of the most important ones is just to show you are interested in your students and what they do. What sports do they play? What kind of music do they like? Another key word is respect. Just because you are the teacher, it doesn't mean that you are better than others. Create an environment in which you are all learning from each other. The way you praise and scold students can make a big difference to the classroom atmosphere. Again, I can highly recommend Carolyn Dweck's work, and the book Opening Minds by Peter Johnson is awesome and should be read by all teachers. We also want to make sure we have energy as teachers, but you don't want to overdo it. Like the inverted U graph proposed by Yerkes and Dodson that I talked about in the last chapter, having no energy as the teacher will not build a good atmosphere. But there does come a time in which the teacher has too much energy, bringing about unintended results. Because building rapport is so important, we should always be on the lookout for for new ideas to create a feeling of mutual respect in our classes. What ideas do you have? Was there anything your teachers did when you were a student that you felt was successful? Let's share some ideas in class. Well, that's it for today. We managed to get through without any major hiccups. I hope you'll spend a bit of extra time thinking about the discussion topics, and I look forward to seeing you in class.